You know, when you saw that Surrey Archives was doing this thing, what inspired you to send in a submission?
Um, my work has been really looking. My conversation a lot is really having good representation here in Surrey, and to speak about it, I would have to role model it. So really, it's really important that I do stay active within the community, and also projects like this was really important because these stories have not been really echoed out in the community. Whenever I do research on queer Filipinos, they're not very much, or there's not very much that what happened in the 90s or the 2000s. All of them are just really recent. So I thought it was really important to start having these storylines recorded and not lost. Um, and it's part of my culture. My grandmother was a good storyteller, and she told stories about our history as. So I wanted to be able to learn to exercise that skill of storytelling.
Let's start super simple. Tell me your full name and how you spell it.
Okay, so my name is Gary Manjola Lising. So you spell it with Gary with one R. Manjola, Mendiola, and Lising is Lising. Um, my middle name is my mother's maiden name, and in my time, the oldest brother usually takes on the mother's maiden name, and that's what they did for me. So people really ask me why is it Manjola, and it sounds like a last name is because that's the reason why. It's culturally appropriate to have your eldest son take on the mother's maiden name.
What are your pronouns, Gary?
My pronouns are he and him. Um,
And how do you identify?
I identify as a cis Filipino gay man. Um, Someone asked me that question, do you really, how you're, what does that really mean to me? And just I think recently I've been really being more gender fluid in regards to my sexuality. Um, for a long time, I've always felt like I have to be very macho or masculine and have those masculine traits. But recently, I really wanted to feel pretty. Uh, I want, yeah, I want to feel pretty, and I think I deserve to be pretty at this age, at the age of 53. I can't believe I'm actually saying that I want to feel pretty at 53.
And you absolutely should, and you are pretty.
Oh, thank you.
How this realization that you need to feel pretty, how does it make you feel?
I think it makes me feel that I'm validated. There's a lot of shame of feeling pretty when I was small, when I was younger, sorry, and when I was smaller. I think when I was feeling more pretty in my teens, my father made me watch Rambo. And he thought that would make me more masculine for some reason. And I did feel attracted to Rambo at that age. So I wasn't really angry with my father for making me or forcing me to watch the movie Rambo. But however, did it really help? The answer is no, it really didn't help. But it did cause trauma, I would say, of not feeling pretty. So I go back and look at it in that way. That yes, my father punished me in his own way, but for me it was a nice way of looking at Rambo. I can.
Sorry.
No, I'm just laughing at it right now, though I don't know why I brought Rambo to this conversation.
Let's talk about you being born. When and where were you born?
Um, I just found out that I was born in the East University Regional Hospital. It's in Quezon City. But I grew up in San Juan. It's a city within Metro Manila. Um, all I remember was living. We lived right behind a tailor shop, My aunt and my uncle operated this tailor shop, and at the back of the tailor shop was a home that my father and mother built, and I had very fond memories of as a child. I could be memories of when I was 3 or 4, of me playing in the tailor shop with my basket in my left hand and an oversized T-shirt as my dress. So those are the stories I remember as a child. But it's funny enough, San Juan was known for as the first battle that for the independence of the Philippines. I just found out, and it was the revolution towards the Spanish. So I've always wondered how relevant that was in my life. I still ask that question, but those were the fond memories I had as a child, that I was really loved and I was pampered and I was cared for. And yeah, so, and yeah.
What was the year when you were born?
I was born on June 20th, 1970. Yeah.
Growing up, you were pampered. You felt free. You felt how was that?
If I go back to remember the memories when I was a little infant, I knew I was loved. I was loved, and I had a lot of favorite aunties. The one the fond memory I remember was we have this Beneg swing that we would have in our home, and I would be there laying with my aunt, and she was my babysitter, and she used to play with my curly hair. When I was a child, I would have curly hair, and there was a lot of like this central love that I received from my aunts and my relatives. Also, I remember my great grandmother. Wow, I can't believe I can remember that she would come and visit us. And she was a very stoic woman, and I just realized she was a teacher. And the stoic face that she would present, I could still remember how proud she was. And after thinking about it, I could realize that I was the first grandchild of the family. So there was some sense of importance that I presented or I represented. And my mom once told me, we have a big house back in the country, and the reason why it was built is because when I was born, my great uncle, or they known as great grandfather, was getting prepared to build a home for all his grandchildren. So that house represents a lot in our family, that it was a legacy that he left behind for not only for his children, but also for his grandchildren. And that really made me think a lot more of what legacy looks like. And maybe this is the reason why I'm doing this right now, this interview with you guys, is because it's important to leave legacy and what that looks like. And if we bring in storytelling and places and people, I think this is what it's all about today. It's really talking about the places, the peoples, and the stories that are involved. It could be what I had in the Philippines or what I'm at now here in Surrey. So I am very grateful to be able to learn to be a good storyteller. I'm not sure if it's going to be a good one, but I can start learning to become one, because this is what I'll be doing as I get older, as an old, mature queer man.
Trust the process.
That's correct. Trust the process.
Growing up in Philippines, but then the move to Canada.
Yeah.
When does that happen? Give me the year, give me the specifics. Do you remember much of it?
Yeah, I remember there was a big commotion. It was November the 3rd, 1974. There was this big commotion, and all these family members coming to this big building, and a lot of people crying and a lot of people hugging. And I could think there was an entourage of 30 to 40 people at the airport. I finally realized that it was the airport, and my mother dressed both my brother and I in this purple suit, and we're on this major trip to some big country. So yeah, so we flew. It was November 4th, 1974. We landed into the Vancouver International Airport. I step out and I look at the sky and say, "Why are we here in Canada? It's gray, it's cloudy, and that's all I can see, and it's all stone." Uh, you have to realize I grew up in a country that's tropical. It's sunny all day, and there's a lot of happy, friendly people. And we came to this country, and I was really doubting, uh, like, is this really the land of plenty, as most people speak about? I didn't really feel family right away. I just felt grayness. But it was the ride from the airport to the main house was really interesting. Um, um, I was listening to this fellow speaking a different language and mixing with Tagalog, and really being prideful about sharing his home with us. So I had to give him that credit. It was my cousin, that you're excited now that you're not alone, and I'm here to be your friend. Um, However, it was a joy and sadness of coming to Canada, I would really say. I would say the first 2 years was really hard for my parents. Um, I don't know what other people's immigrant stories look like, but the first 2 years was very difficult for my mom and father. My mother had a degree in nutrition, and my father had a degree as a engineer. And to translate their credentials here in Canada was very, very difficult. And I often, as a 4-year-old, we hear them cry often. And that was really difficult for a year-old to hear their parents, their caregivers often cry. And for myself, I would have to learn how to start taking care of myself quickly also, because they were out and about looking for work. The first 2 years, we actually lived in an attic of a house. And sometimes I go back and look at this house, and it's still there, and it's owned by our families. It was on Main and 39th in Vancouver. And we usually call it the immigration house, because everybody in the family that came from the Philippines actually lived in that house, and they would go through that house and then resettle into a new home. So we often make practical jokes about this house. This is the immigration house, and this is where Canada takes us Filipinos through. It's the gateway, the Dorothy door to get into another world, right?
Do you remember the address?
Hmm?
Do you remember the address?
It was on Main and 39th. I forgot I still can see that it's a concrete brick house. I was thinking about what was the address. I don't remember, but I do remember the second house, the first house my parents purchased. It was 1980, and it was 420 East 36, which is about 3 blocks away from the big house. And that was, my parents were really proud of actually being able to purchase that house, because they got it for $60,000. And then quickly after, it doubled in price. So they were really surprised that that house at 1980, around March, you can purchase it for $60,000 in Vancouver. I bet now that house is about $2 million and still standing.
So coming from this carefree environment where you're loved and nurtured and your aunties are looking after you, to a cold, gray place that's always cloudy, and your parents are stressed, that feeling of pride that you had back in Philippines, what did it turn into?
That's a really good question. The sense of love. I think the first 2 years was really loneliness, I felt. And I had to find some sense of security as a child. And I can remember memories of me sitting by a windowsill on the top in an attic, and I would sing often as a child. Um, and actually, I was actually singing to a higher power, like, it was really God. I was really connected, speaking to God.
Do you remember that song or those songs?
I don't remember the song at all. I can only remember finding peace, uh, singing out through the window to some sort of higher power defines purpose and completion. And that gave me a lot of joy. Um, Besides everything else, feeling really gray and feeling very indifferent and different. Um, I think it was our background, our spiritual background as our culture, our connection to God was that kept me grounded. Um, and yeah, kept me really grounded.
Let's go to your school years. Where did you attend school? And give me the years.
Probably was 1976. The first school I went to was Van Horn Elementary School. It was at Ontario and 41st area, I guess. As an immigrant, I think I was treated unfairly by the teacher. They thought I had a learning disability, so they sent me to a special ed class, and I was associated with other kids that might have some learning challenges. It's really, at the end of the day, I'm a new immigrant to the country. My caregivers around me had a difficult time speaking English. I was able to speak the language, but I was witty enough to get through the school. And be able to maneuver myself in that system. So, I was able to sum up that the teacher was wrong, even though I was 6 years old. I got the other students in trouble because I wanted to redirect the attention to the other students. So that was my survivor skills at the age of 6. And then I was waiting to go to another school. So I did see a specialist with learning disabilities, and they also concluded that I was just a new immigrant to this country that really just needed some additional assistance with how to speak English. And from there, my parents sent me to a private school. It's really important that for them to have all us cousins going to a school. So my brother and myself went to St. Andrews. It's a Catholic private school in Vancouver. And that was a joy because I was surrounded with my cousins. And my teacher, my grade 2 teacher, was my auntie. So I was not only was blessed with that, but again, this became, I think, what I remembered in the Philippines, family, and that neutral, central support systems were being developed. So that was, I think, the best they could have done for both myself and my brother, being sent to a private school and getting all that support, and started meeting other people of my ethnic descent also in the same space. So, and becoming more familiar with my surroundings. So
Going to a Catholic school.
Yeah, it helped.
Growing up, when did you start realizing that, oh, something's different?
I knew it when I was 6 years old anyways. I thought it was just a normal part of being who I am. That I had crushes on boys. I admired the school teacher who had really long hair, curly hair. I knew that was who I was, but I really didn't have the language to be able to explore what does that really mean. The language of being gay or queer. Those weren't language that was spoken within my community. There was a language that was spoken in my community called bakla. However, that didn't really even translate towards who I am. that was usually referenced towards people who were either feminine or transgender. So the language, the language itself, bakla, has been changing from what it was back in the 70s to what it's now. We're reinventing that name and translating what that really means to the community. Um, so
when was it when you realized, oh, there's a name for this feeling that I have? When did that moment happen?
I think as I was growing a little older, going through puberty. I think when I was in grade 5, I was doing a little more different things. My interests were different. I think shame towards being called bakla was developing. When I was growing up, I had a nickname. They started calling me bakla. In translation, gay or trans or so. And there was this developing shame or internalized shame that was developing as I was maturing. I think it impacted me a lot heavier during the 80s. So when the HIV pandemic hit, the AIDS pandemic hit North America or throughout the world, that was when more internalized stigma and shame was developing and that's when I actually went back deeper into the closet and reinventing myself and losing that part of being appreciating my feminine characteristics.
How does that, add another layer to it of being the eldest cousin?
Yeah. There was a lot of pressure on myself. Being as a new immigrant in the country in the 70s and 80s, there are not very many Filipinos still in Canada until Expo hit in 1986. Everybody knew who everybody was during that period of time. My family, my extended family, was getting quite prominently, was getting popular within the Philippines. Earlier, we talked about Gary at times becomes an expert chameleon. And that's really how I started to learn to become. That was where I became a chameleon, and to hide certain portions of myself and allow people to see what they need to see. And that, during the early stages of me growing up, became something I became really good at. I would allow people to see me in a certain light or a certain impression. And then I would go on my own and privately becoming who I really wanted to become. So there was this shift from allowing my community to see who I am as this conservative, brown Filipino boy who has really good grades and who was respectful and was very community driven. And there was this other side that was creative, flamboyant, and artistic, that I really didn't have to, I didn't share very often. I kept it very, very close into myself. It was my gift to myself, actually. I remember playing with dolls and dressing up in fabric. And I did it in private, and it was a gift for myself. So,
so in your journey of self-exploration, you're realizing these things about yourself, but you're being called these horrible names on the other hand. So you're going in. At the same time, you mentioned the AIDS epidemic happens.
Mm-hmm.
What are you feeling at the time?
Yeah, so that period of time was 1984. I was 14 years old, about to enter high school. And the only purpose I had, an escape I had, was my grandfather, who was my father's, on my father's side. My uncle purchased a series of laundromats, and I think my grandfather actually realized that I was a lot more different than the rest of his niece and nephews. I was a lot more, yeah, he realized I was different. And I spent a lot of time with him, and he was really kind and gentle with me and brought a lot of joy in my life. I would spend the weekends with him at the laundromat, and he would mentor me and show me what work looks like and the ethics of work. Yeah, when I was 13, I was working at a laundromat, and alongside from my mentor was my grandfather Pascual. He was really, really kind, and he just loved me the way I was. Uh, Never lectured or criticized the way I would carry myself. I think that's the reason why the work of what I do is really important, because you accept people the way they are, and he did the same. I didn't realize that he was my first mentor.
Do you want to take a moment?
I think I can go on.
Do you remember where this laundromat was?
Yeah, it was on Kingsway and 41st. He knew my favorite dish was this noodle dishes. Any noodle dish was my favorite dish. So during lunchtime, we would order a dish for us to share during lunch hours. The rest of my aunties and my uncles would always get really jealous because I was his favorite. They would say, you are his favorite." However, my grandfather was very clever. He loved every single grandchild he had. He had special nicknames for him, but he treated them their specific way. And my specific way he learned was to show that attention, right? And to teach. It was really what I was. I was a learner, so he was constantly teaching something new. And working at the laundromat got me through those really hard times. I think that's where, from high school onwards, I would be working at the laundromat. I would engage with people from diverse backgrounds. Really got to know street smarts at the same way. I would do my homework there. I was really good in math. And I think that's where I learned how to negotiate time and space. I ran that business. So I learned a lot of really good life skills while I was growing up, and discipline also.
Next question, answer however little or however much you want to. Let's talk about your sexual awakenings in your late teens. What can you tell me about that?
I really haven't thought about that. No, I have an idea. My favorite pastime, or my greatest sin growing up, was going to the convenience store next to these stores that I was working at, the laundromat, and pick up pornography. However, yeah, there might be the pictures and all that stuff, but what was arousing was the stories that I would hear or I would read. So, when there was no relatives around, and I would go to the corner store during my breaks and pick up the X-rated magazines, and really focused on the storylines and the erotica that was shared in these stories. And that was really, I was exploring, though I was maybe not out yet. To arouse my curiosity and my interests, I was reading a lot. And that's yes, the pictures were wonderful to look at, both men and women at the same time. But the male to male storylines were really intriguing, and yeah, it was really, I really enjoyed as a teenager.
And when did you come to terms with your own sexuality? That, okay, you know what, this is it.
This is it. I was a late bloomer. I wasn't, I didn't explore my sexuality with another human being till the age of 20. Back then, we had things called BBSs. And I can still remember the ring to get in, to sign in, and the hour that it takes to get to connect to another human being. It takes that long to connect to these websites or these BBS sites that they were in. And that's where the first encounters I were having with other men was through these BBSs. Also, I don't remember. I think computer was something brand new for us. I was the generation that, I was the generation that BBSs were coming. Technology was coming out. So these were all brand new things. Everybody, it was a rave to have a computer at your house. So, and the computers I had were really like big computers. So it was an investment. I was really proud to take my earnings from the laundromat and be able to get myself my own computer, which was a big machine. So,
what year are we talking?
I would guess this is like in 1988, 1989. I bet you weren't even born then, but that was someone who was in the closet like myself, living in the suburb or in East Vancouver, West Van. This is how I was able to connect, and my life was really sheltered. It was around family. Really didn't go outside the family, so this is how I was able to connect. But for some reason, I found that there was this LGBT community center on Davie Street that I heard of, and I first started attending the Friday evening groups for youth around the 2000. That was the first time I actually connected with, like, face to face with other youth like myself, which is now called community. So they had a Friday group, so I would attend, and I would lie to my parents that I'm going to the library to study on a Friday evening, and they actually did believe me that I'm going there to study at the library, and I would actually go and travel downtown and discover the youth group.
Did you ever? You must have felt fear that, oh, what if somebody sees me?
I think the more I was, there was fear, but more it was naivety. I was really naive. It wasn't until 2000 that I actually heard there was a Davie Street and there was a Denman Street. My family kept it really quiet. The only streets I knew about Vancouver was Robson Street and Burrard Street and Granville Street, and those were the only places I was allowed to go, to the mall or to the library. And anything outside to that was foreign to me. So when I discovered Denman Street, my eyes blew at how many beautiful men there were. And also, and my grandmother, her assumption of Davie Street was back in the 70s, that she would say, she would encourage me to carry a knife in my pocket. And I would laugh at her, no, they don't do that anymore, grandmother. So everything was brand new to me. It was a new world of discovery. I didn't see Vancouver of this sort.
When did you meet another Filipino queer for the very first time?
It was Diana Rose. It was a drag queen. Her name was Diana Rose, and I was afraid of her because she would always give me the eye. She was a drag queen who was very flirtatious, and she would chase me down celebrities when I was a young club hopper back then. And also met another fellow, a Filipino fellow, his name. What was his name? He became a really close friend of my brother. the year I came out, the year later, my brother came out as well. So there's two gay brothers in the same family. My brother was more very popular and got around and met lots of friends, and I was more reserved. So because I carried the burden of I'm the oldest and I need to be a little more stoic, a little more conservative, and don't. So so I kept to myself often. So, but no, that was there was one or two Filipinos that we really met. Actually, there was only one Filipino friend we had really. Both my brother and I shared, and then we got to know the drag queens, Imelda May Santos and Deanna Rose were the two that we met. We're friends still with Imelda May Santos.
What was the year? Do you remember, or the?
It would probably be maybe 1992, around that year. I know my brother came out around 1991. I came out in 1990. And then the club scene hit really hard, and so we started going out often. But I had to. I was really consumed with work at that time because I decided to move out. I wouldn't be able to explore my sexuality or or just to be adventurous if I was living at home. So I decided during that early age, I made that really decision to move out, which I'm not sure if it was the right thing to do, but for my gender expression, it was the right thing to do.
Where did you move to?
I moved to this place in the West End. Was my first home on Harwood. I found a really nice, pleasant roommate. We lived in a 2-bedroom. He was a country gay boy into country music, and I was into house and R&B. That was really what differentiated the both of us.
Do you remember the very first time you made the trek all the way down to Surrey?
Surrey it took many, many years for me to get to Surrey. As a person that was dependent on transit, I didn't often go to Surrey. However, when I made the decision to migrate to and live into Surrey is when I actually entered recovery. That's when 26 years later, over 20 years later, I had to make a major shift in my health. And Surrey was the place I decided to go to.
I'm gonna move back a little bit now. Coming out at 20, what was that like? Give me the year. Give me the specifics.
Coming out. I hear a lot of people coming out was a process of sharing with their families and their families and their friends that they are queer or gay. That process didn't happen for me at all. I came to the conclusion that I to come out, that meaning that I came out on my own, and I kind of fled my family to be able to discover who I am as a person. So coming out was a lot more at the beginning, sneaking around, really, getting out to places I wanted to go. It was really, I'm not sure, I'm getting a little lost right now with this. It wasn't a pleasant thing. Let's not sugarcoat this. The coming out process wasn't as sugar as I want. Yeah, it wasn't a pleasant process.
When did your parents and relatives and family find out?
It took many years for them to find out. I was more concerned about being caught by them. So yeah, to your answer to earlier, yeah, I was more concerned of being caught and also being put on. Yeah, I was more afraid of being caught and I had to explain myself and defend myself. There's this level of respect and when an elder in your community directs you to do something, I was trying to avoid that. They would have most likely asked me to get married and have children, and I think that was what I was really protecting myself from having, of being able to, of getting married, having children, and then coming out after. That was why I was doing a lot of the sneaking around and trying to create two communities for myself. I couldn't see myself putting children through that, or even a partner through that. So
You came out at 20, and then you mentioned your brother came out at the next year. Help me understand what happened there. Did you know that you both were gay? Did you confide into each other, or what was that like?
I did come out. I think there was, yeah, that was fast. I coming out, then him finding out that I'm going to particular bars and nightclubs, and then he decides to come out, but identifies to be bisexual, which I started laughing because he was far from bisexual, I think, the way he carried himself. Uh, I would have to say there was a sense of joy I had from there, because then I wasn't feeling alone, and I had a partnership of yeah, I didn't feel alone at the end of the day, and he became a really good friend and ally, and we started living and supporting each other and encouraging each other to live fully and as two queer boys out there. I've always been jealous with my brother because he had things easier for himself than I would. He had the first boyfriend, and it took me years to find a boyfriend. He was always favored by the family, and always, so yeah, there was a sense, and he always made friends quicker than I did. I was always guarded for some reason. So yeah, though they, I did have that support, but I was really jealous with my brother because he had this ability to connect with people very quickly.
So you move out, you're partying, you're having fun, your brother is there to support you, you're there to support him.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, you indulging into drugs. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that journey, that timeline.
My first love was really work, and I was really proud with the work I was doing. You know, I was moving from one career to another career, and it was very successful, and I was doing really well, and financially yeah, I was doing really, really well. And I was in a relationship, I was engaged, and I fell into drugs when I was maybe at the age of 38 or 36, one of the two. That's when everything around me started to collapsing. Things I was building around me, having my dreams of having family, my dreams of having a really strong career, started fading away. So I recently broke up with my partner. We were engaged. I found myself in a work environment that wasn't very supportive. I felt taken advantage of because of yeah, I felt I was taken advantage of, and one day at the top of my career, I looked around and I was alone. I was disassociated with my family. I was disassociated with all my friends. I felt really isolated. So I didn't realize I was going through depression, and I resigned from the place I was working at, and then it started, and I found recreational drugs. which led to more harder drugs.
How did you get to a point of depression and feeling isolated from, having all the support? How did that happen? Because you were working so hard and that was your primary focus, or what happened there? And give me the years, please.
Yeah. So I got addicted to cocaine and crystal meth at the age of 38. And that was around 2008. And at that time, I had a strong career in retail management. And in the 2008, I think the world experienced a major recession in regards to, and that really impacted the work I did. I was a general manager for a big box store in Metrotown, and there was a lot of work conditions that were unfair, and I was working a lot. So, and my background was in human resources and people development. I was really proud of that, and the environment I was working for was asking less of that. So, from a person in people development and nurturing people, it was all about profit. So there was a conflict within those two areas. And my innate feeling of developing people came into play for myself. When I fell into addiction, I knew that I needed to take care of myself and redirect and let go of all the other things that get really cloudy. And it was really people-centered, and I had to center myself really quickly. When I first did the drug, when I first had my first hit of crystal meth, I told myself, "You're in big trouble, Gary." For some reason, I told myself, "You're in really big trouble, and you start axing resources right now, because if you go further, we're going to lose you." And that was the conversation I was having myself during that period of time. We're going to lose you. So I was resourceful, though I was struggling with depression, I was struggling with addiction. I was resourceful enough to access services within the Greater Vancouver area, and then I connected myself to to a program called the Vancouver Addictions Matrix Program. It was a program specialized for gay men who was dealing with crystal meth use. And at that time, I was becoming homeless. I was jumping from one sofa to another sofa. I was losing my solid career within the retail industry. I was also hiding my addiction at that period of time. But my ability to start communicating my feelings was coming out, and I was disclosing a lot of information to my mother. I started telling her how I was feeling at that age, when I was 38. I was telling her that I'm depressed. I was coming to terms and I was sharing with her that I'm lost and I don't know what to do. And I knew she was also lost, and she was confused how to help me. But I think from that perspective, I really needed someone in my life that I could to tell the truth, and she was there to be the receiver of the truth. And she started telling me that she loved me. So I found purpose again, or a glimpse of purpose. What does that look like? Not to give up, because people out there still loves me. So for the next 5-6 years was my road to try to find something stable. I was looking for some sense of stability. I started attending NA groups, AA groups, and of course, guess what? I was the only Filipino guy in those environments, or only Asian guy, which I was really angry about. There was no representation, or very lack of representation of queer within BIPOC people in these environments. It was all centralized around Caucasian people. So that angered me when I was going to these meetings. Um, and so yeah, I was really angry to see that.
Were there around you when you were, trying to get on a path of recovery, were there resources focused on gay men?
There was
In that situation.
there were. I mean, there were some. I mean, him was creating some resources out there. Was entering, yeah, and also there was the Three Bridges, but there was always some place I wanted to go within that whole process, and it was going to treatment. And there was a few treatment centers I wanted to go to, and there was one in Vancouver and one in Surrey. And I remember the day that I really asked, I found that it would either I would have to go to a treatment center, and it was really imperative that I do go because I would lose myself in this whole process of addiction. I put in 2 applications and trust the process. I did one for Phoenix Society, which is here in Surrey, and there's another one out here also in Vancouver. So I waited for 30 days to receive a phone call and allow the system to do its work. And it was Phoenix who called me first, and that's how I was reintroduced to Surrey. It was through the recovery process of going to a treatment center in Surrey next to the hospital. And that's another different story that we can get into. But
What were the years that we're talking here?
it was 2013. 2013 was a very difficult time for myself. 2013, let's go back a little more. From 2008 to 2013, I was in and out actively into recovery programs, either in a recovery house program, or I was engaged with outpatient treatment programs. And at that time, I was staying with my parents. And then again, I went and lived out on my own again, and my recovery collapsed because I didn't have a strong foundation in my recovery. And in 2013, that's the year that I was diagnosed with HIV. It's through my active addiction, and then I was in treatment, and then I decided to place my applications with both treatment centers. I missed your question.
We're good. Now, during the time you mentioned you are diagnosed with HIV, what was that like?
It was, when I first heard the word, like, you're HIV positive, I was really in shock. And I remember the phone call that I received from public health. It was like, Gary, we would like to invite you to come in to get tested because it'd be your best interest. And I still can echo that phone call in my mind. It'll be your best interest to come in. So when I came in, I got tested, and it was positive. And then we sent in a conclusive test to find out about the status, and then it was conclusive that it was HIV positive. And it took a really long time for me to process this. I was in shock for many months about this, angry and shocked at the same time, because I was the generation that knew better. Billy Porter once said that in one of his interviews, and it kind of stuck to me that I am the generation that knew better. I grew up through the pandemic, the AIDS pandemic. And at the age of 43, I contracted HIV in 2013. And I was in shock, like, how could this happen? And I didn't realize that this did happen. So I was really angry, and I didn't realize I was self-destructing at that period of time, because I was in shock. I was self-destructing, and and there was something that occurred to me that triggered my self-destruction. Um, Many months ago, earlier that year, I found that something happened to me in one of my, and when I was something happened to me when I was out in the community. It's really funny sometimes that your brain kind of protects and parks memories around you, things that happen to you in the situation, and parks that in your mind until you get the right information. And later that year, I found out that I was sexually assaulted earlier that year. That triggered my behavior to self-destruct and made really poor decisions that caused me to contract HIV. And that was just self-harming, really, that's what it was. And that was the trigger that really motivated my reasoning to go into treatment right away, because what it is I didn't have the supports to be able to process first the trauma of being sexually assaulted, having that conversation, or having shared that diagnosis, and also I was going through depression at the same time. So it was the right thing to do. And that's where the series of what has happened that led me to, it's time to stop everything. Because if I don't, this will lead to to death. I will die if I don't take care of myself.
So you're at Phoenix. Were you determined? What was that like, that year of recovery?
Oh man, that was really hard. After doing so many types of treatments, and the reason why I chose Phoenix is because I know it will be a heteronorm environment that I want to present myself the gift to be able to go and address some of my internalized homophobia that I've been carrying for the last 23 years. I wanted to address the shame that I carried, address some of the traumas I experienced, and the isolation and loneliness. And why was I always isolating myself from people that really loved and cared about me? So that was the decision why I made that. I wanted that application to go through. I could have gone to the other one, which is all, space, queer space safe, but I wanted to really get that chance to examine that. So, yeah, so Phoenix was the gift I really needed. Earlier when I said there was the gift of time, I needed to take a year off to really take some time off from life or existing. I needed to find out why I didn't feel I deserved love. So I was determined to take care of myself. I didn't need anybody to rescue me. I needed to father myself. That's what I had to do. I needed to learn how to be a father to myself. I had to amplify the love that my grandfather bestowed me. So I had to when I got to Phoenix, I made a promise that I would not leave and I would stay. And I need to get back to my indigenous roots. At that time, I was isolated from my community, so I had to figure out a way to mimic what that looks like. So out of nowhere, I didn't realize that they had a sweat lodge in the back of Phoenix. And every Sunday I would go there and I would pray and sing with the men. I would learn their customs and learn to sing. Just like when I was 4 years old, that window, I started learning to sing again. I didn't realize just now that how life can have these parallels, that again I was learning to sing again, and as a 4 I would soothe myself through prayer and song. In that space, when I was doing the sweats, I learned the responsibility of what warriors do and our responsibility to community, and that's what the gift of that sweat lodge offered me, to remind me of what a real man does, is to be kind and gentle.
I do want to ask you, and if we don't need to go into this, but I just, if you want to think about, what were the events that led you to believe that you're by yourself, that you had to do things on your own?
What events led me to do things on my own? I think when I was a young boy, I did things on my own often, and if I look at the patterns of my life, that I would initiate things on my own, because what it is I don't want anybody to interrupt the process and make that, and then I need to be mindful that this is the decision I decide to. I take all responsibility of what has happened in my life. And a lot of it was right for me. And it was right for that moment in that situation. And sometimes we look at the situations could be so simple, but it's really a lot more diverse than most people might think. The reason that time when I went to Phoenix, I did it on my own because I did everything what other people want me to do. The reasons to go recovery was because it was going to be for my parents' sake, or because it was going to be for someone else's sake. But I think the last time I went to recovery, it was because it was for my sake. I was being selfish. Yeah, I was being selfish because it was my gift to myself. However, when I got there, I learned that I didn't have to do things on my own. I could work in a tribe. I do really well in groups. I really do really well as in groups of many. I learned that I was a good listener, and I was empathic, and I was gentle, and the mannerism, my feminine traits were my strengths, and I was able to hold space well, and not allow things to disempower me.
That year of recovery, and if I read your submission after that year, then it's all about Surrey.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that in a bit, but your diploma as a community support worker, why? What led you to think about doing that?
When I was diagnosed, I met my first peer navigator. His name was Paul, and he was working at that time, working for Positive Living Society. That was where the first peer navigators for HIV started. It was at Positive Living Society of British Columbia. And that was at 2013. I was assigned to him. And when I was in, and a few months later, I kept on meeting with Paul. And I think that was the time when I decided that I wanted to become a peer navigator myself. I was deciding which intersexual community will I be working in. And I knew it was somewhere either in the addictions or in the HIV or in the immigration area. And the natural response for myself was HIV for some reason. So I did. I pursued my career as a community support worker for the intention to become a peer navigator. And the others, like either in immigration or in addictions, would be my sidelines of support. So yeah, so that was the reason why I decided to become a support worker, is because I wanted to become a peer navigator. I didn't tell that to my employer. I don't tell my employer that in 2015 when Gary decided to go back to school, it was really to get their job. And it was. I fell in love with the community, the HIV community. I saw that we all shared some similar trauma, and we were able to and I saw a community of resilient people, and I connected with them. So it was a natural response to a situation and a career that I wanted to pursue. And it was a natural response also for myself to become a peer support worker, because my background in retail management was developing people. And I loved watching people grow. And the work I do now is watching people grow. There's no difference. One is nonprofit, the other was profit. I do both in both environments. So that was my reasoning to pursuing a career within nonprofits. So.
And you currently work at an HIV clinic here in Surrey.
Yep. The overall picture is I work for a nonprofit called AIDS Vancouver, which we're contracted to work at various clinics throughout BC. But my home, where I work at, which I always return to, is here in Surrey at Jim Pattison. That's where I grew to become a support worker. I collaborate and understand how the system works within healthcare for people living with HIV. It's where I got grounded and I was accepted. I remember my first intake coming in as a patient at Jim Pattison at the Positive Health Clinic I was a mess. And I love telling that to people. The new diagnosis that I would be. When I came here, when I arrived, I was a mess. However, it was through time and patience and through community, I started getting better and I was healing as a person. And it doesn't happen right away. It takes time, and it takes a lot of kindness also. So, and since then, I've never left Surrey, ever. I don't see myself leaving Surrey at all.
And your fingerprints are all over these queer organizations in Surrey. How did that start?
I think it was quite accidental. Actually, no, it wasn't accidental. I befriended Alex Senga, the founder for Share Vancouver. He found me through Pinoy Pride Vancouver Society. In 2010, I met with a bunch of queer Filipinos and decided to create a nonprofit. Or first, it was an association of Filipino queer identifying individuals who are, but recently became a nonprofit. But yes, so I met with Alex, and Alex has been very instrumental in getting me connected with organizations across Surrey. As well, I fell in love in Surrey, his name is David Cook, and he has been very active in the queer spaces here in Surrey as well. He volunteers for Impama. So most of my friends are either volunteers of a nonprofit or affiliated with the nonprofit, and like-minded people stick together. Yes, Surrey was where I fell in love.
Okay, let's go back a little bit to 2020, when Pinoy Pride was founded.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Do you remember where you were sitting when you had that idea or when you had that conversation?
Yeah, I was living at my mother's house back in 2010, and I was going in and out of NA, AA meetings, and it was really visible that there weren't very many supports for people of color within these communities, or no lack of representation. I didn't see anybody look like me at these meetings, so I really thought to myself, where are all where is everybody, right? So I heard of an organization, a group of people that there was an entry in the Vancouver Pride Parade in 2010, and it was led by Mabel Elmore, who is the MLA of Vancouver Kensington. So I made that decision to go and email Mabel Elmore, saying, "Hey, I heard that you and your friends, had an entry at the Pride Parade. Have you guys thought of creating a group, a support group of some sort?" So later that fall, I was invited to go to Mabel Elmer's office to, without me knowing, construct an organization. So that's how it all started. An invitation to go to Mabel's office and meet with other like-minded individuals, leaders within the Filipino community who identify to be LGBT plus, and we had a goal to host the first event.
And when did that happen?
It was May 4th, 2011. We had our first Mabuhay party at one of the nightclubs on Davie Street, sorry. And though I was in and out of recovery and working, we were doing a lot of community events throughout Greater Vancouver. We started called the Mabuhay event. We also, and we hosted this really big event down in the West End. Later that year, we hosted a bowling event, had all these people from other organizations come, both from the Filipino community and also from the LGBT community. Nonprofits were doing this bowling competition in costume. And then we were doing a lot of other fun events. We found Pinoy Pride found that our strength is really hosting events. So we stuck with that, worked with our strengths, and then which led to other aspects of other collaborations that we did in the future.
So let's talk about those collaborations. Surrey Pride, Share Vancouver, Impama. Give me the years, give me the details.
Ooh, that's really hard. I'm getting really old. I think there was one collaboration once that I heard. Surrey wanted to do a Surrey Now and highlight all the diversity that Surrey was having. So Alex and myself were on they did a poster campaign of immigrants across Surrey, and I think that was happening around 2015. So Alex and I were both on posters, posted on bus stops across Surrey, to amplifying all the diverse cultures and intersects of all of people in Surrey, and from youth to seniors to all that. So that was one project that we were at. Surrey Pride was something that we were, Pinoy Pride was very active in. We would love, every year we would be at the festivals and having our booth up there. We've done some work with Surrey Pride, hosting Christmas parties here in Surrey, and lots of house parties.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, Kuya Gary.
Yeah.
What does this mean? And finding Kuya, tell me.
Kuya in my language, Kuya, means big brother. Growing up in Canada, we don't really, we didn't get a chance to really practice some of our traditional cultures and customs. And so as I was growing up, I was never called Kuya, big brother. It was, we were very westernized here in this country. Just since 2010, it became really important to me being called, understanding what Kuya is and what does that really mean. And it was through recovery that I understood, and through participating at Sweats, understanding what my role as a man is, may look like in my community. It became something very precious to me because it means I was accepted by my family. Since I went to recovery, I've been asked many, many times to become a godfather for many of my family's children. I think right now I can count 6. It kind of proves me that I've done, kind of validates where I am in life right now, that someone, we don't take it very lightly calling someone Kuya Gary. It's like, it's a title that we give to people either through respect or because of their position within their families. And I felt that I've worked hard for that. I worked really hard for that, for that respect. So yeah, being called Kuya has some love to that also, in that respect. And I can hear my cousins murmur that to me sometimes. Not because they want something from me, it's because they really believe that I am the big brother. So it tells me that everything's going to be okay. We love you the way you are, and we want my children around you because we know that you can inspire your children. And that's why I really am fond with that nickname, Kuya Gary.
Now, to me, it seems like it's young Gary who felt like he didn't have support or community or those aunties around him. He's trying to change that a little bit for the younger generation here.
Say that again?
So the supports that you felt like you didn't have growing up here, you're trying to change that. So perhaps if somebody's in your shoes now, wouldn't have to deal with that because you're here.
Yeah. I look at all the young men that I've met so far, that they really didn't have to go through what I went through. There's, in 2010, I met this young boy. His name is Tony, and he was 18, and I saw him the way I saw myself at that age. Lost, concerned that someone will find out about sexual orientation. What will happen to me when I get older? will I have children in the future? Well, you know, he had all those questions that he had, and and I was there for him to answer some of those questions. So I became his Kuya, or 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 a mentor or a role model. Yeah, I think what it is I'm bestowing something that I wasn't able to, I didn't receive when I was their age. I didn't have any role models back then. I didn't know how to be, or where the resources were, um, or how that conversation to take place. Um, we have it now. People are coming out from the shadows, and surfacing and saying there are role models you can talk to or inspire towards to become, or see some of the mistakes they've made so you can learn from. So am I here today because to iron out those issues? Yeah, I'm here because of that. It's really important to have those role models in life. In 2013, or 2012, my friends and I started a radio show, and our goal was to amplify people coming out and amplifying role models in the arts, science, and culture part, within academia. We interviewed. Um, we, my friends and I, found it really important to find diverse role models out there so people can inspire towards too. Or give them permission, yeah, I can start dreaming again, and I can dream big. I don't have to take whatever that's given to me. I can inspire and become whatever I want to dream to become. So,
how do you feel when you look at the younger generations and they're a bit more carefree, they're a bit more celebratory when it comes to their gender expression or their sexualities, they're a bit more accepted perhaps? How does it make you feel?
There's a term in my language called Bayanean. Bayanean is where communities work into a common goal. And I think seeing the youth right now being able to do that is a commonality called Bayanean, meaning all the organizations that worked before then and who are presently now are working towards a common goal and creating what I see freedom and space. So that tells me that though we might all have different directions, these nonprofits and organizations working at different spaces and different speeds, we're actually working in harmony towards one common goal, which is freedom and freedom to express, and freedom to become, and freedom to do what you need to do in a good way, right? So, yeah. So I haven't used that word for a very long time, by Nia, or spared, and this is a really good example of one. But we all, us of all diverse backgrounds, are working towards too.
When you look at Surrey today, how has it changed since you got to know Surrey for the very first time?
It's almost like a garden. You know, I grow dahlias, and I love dahlias. And every time a flower blooms, it's in like another queer organization developing. And then another event, which is queer represented, is developing. And that's what I'm seeing from Surrey. There's a lot of new organizations doing really, really good work. And they're expanding, and you're seeing clusters of flowers opening up throughout Surrey, and events and celebrations and workshops. And people are becoming fearless in allowing people to see them. So that's what I see what's happening here in Surrey. The 2S LGBTQ plus community is becoming fearless and allowing people to see them, and seeing them the way they want them to be seen. And it's the most important. Hey, I came here in 2013, and it took and it took till now for a pride flag to be raised at City Hall. And that really tells me that, yeah, we're patient, we're persistent, and we had to put the right people in the right positions in this city to do the right thing. So it's really through our votes and our campaigning and our networking really to get to where we're at today. So that's what I see where Surrey's at right now.
Looking forward in the future, when we look at all this rhetoric happening around the world, North America now, here as well, it's been here, now it's amplified. What do you want the future queers to know about this place?
What do I want them to know about this place? It's in 1990, Surrey wasn't a place for a queer person to go to. So it was, and if you are, you would go back into the back into the closet. So what I want to tell the future, for the future to know about now, is that there's lots of fearless people right now who can settle in Surrey and find space and share space and find allies. And you can grow a family, and yeah, you can grow a family and start dreaming and to dream big. So that's what I want to tell them also. And also I would like to encourage the future to take up space, meaning I would like to see more lived life experience individuals, people of BIPOC color, to be in the positions of create change, be part of the decision process, and be part of that table when in regards to whatever social innovation that needs to be developed within the city, or policies that need to be revisited. I want to encourage them to be part of that.
My last question. Gary, who thought he didn't have support, who was trying to go through recovery all those years ago, who had to do it alone, versus now, where you sit, where you're supporting people, where people are calling you Kuya Gary. How does it feel?
I think relieved. There's moments that I would be my camouflage self, or I would be a chameleon at times, but it's really refreshing to allow myself to take a break from that and allow myself to be me. Yeah, to be really me, and not to be so concerned in what other people are talking about or thinking about, and just to be able to breathe and also to fall in love. I think at the end of the day, I think we all want to fall in love, and I didn't really realize that I would fall in love in Surrey and live old in Surrey. So I think that's really how I feel today. And also I've arrived and I'm at home. When I say arrived is I've made Surrey as my home. My partner and I always debate, where are we going to retire? Where are we going to retire? And I can't see myself leave Surrey just because my families are and my roots are here now. My community is here. And my future is here. So that's all I can say right now.